Rain of Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that race line. Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC has hired Lincoln Riley. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio. This is the Carcast after USC's obliteration by Notre Dame, 48-20. 48-20 at the Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant of Troy. Be sure to subscribe to our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Email address, rantoftroy@fancenter.com. Phone number, 818-643-7227. Suck it, Whisper and Show. Don't call in too much. You might, completely tank the server. But that's the number, 818-643-7227. As always, I'm your host, Mario Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant Line studio in Los Angeles, along with my co-host, Alicia Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. I'm just going to go out on a limb. I didn't see this one going exactly like this. Did you? No, I didn't. Right?
No, not at all.
No.
It may have even been opposite day on the football field.
I could see a game in which SC got beat. Surely, yeah. I could like that. That part isn't the shocker. I could see a game in which SC got soundly beaten. Sure. I don't think I would have envisioned this game happening in the way that it did. But it did. SC loses 48-20 in a game in which Caleb Williams, the best player in college football, did not look like the best player in college football. He threw 3 interceptions, did not look like himself. The Trojans did not do much on offense. Notre Dame didn't have to do much on offense because their defense completely dominated USC's offensive line, and that just won them the game entirely. 48-20 was the final. Let's get right into it. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are I'm currently trying to go back in time through the stat sheets to find the last time that USC turned the ball over 5 times in a game. Ooh, I found it. At Arizona, 2012, a 36
The Marquise Lee game.
loss.
The Marquise Lee game. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
that was not a game in which SC had trouble moving the ball on offense, though.
No.
Yeah.
You're not going to win a game. You're not going to win a rivalry game where your quarterback throws the ball away 3 times in the first half and you get in a 20-point hole. It's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. So there's that. That's the first half story. The first half story to me is very much Caleb Williams making mistakes that he does not make, that we have not seen him make. These are uncharacteristic. He was forcing it, tossing it up, and a good Notre Dame secondary that we knew was a good secondary took advantage. Even if they weren't a good secondary, I do not think any of those interceptions were anything particularly special in terms of secondary play.
I thought the second one, the second one was or was it the third one? Either way, the one where he's rolling to the left, and he throws essentially into triple coverage. I thought that was a nice play by the DB.
Yeah, no,
it was still a bad decision to throw the ball there.
All decent plays, but very, very bad mistakes.
There nearly were a couple picks that would have been great plays if they were able to hold on to them.
It just put USC behind the 8 ball, and and the reason for those picks are twofold. Number one, Caleb Williams made bad decisions. And if he doesn't make those bad decisions, it is a very different game. Those bad decisions stemmed from USC's offensive line being terrible. So on that, like in that sense, if the offensive line was not terrible, then Caleb Williams probably doesn't feel the need to force those throws and doesn't throw the interception. So the offensive line certainly plays a role, but we've also seen USC's offensive line have struggles and put Caleb Williams in position where he had to run for his life on every single play, and he didn't make those same bad decisions. So this was uncharacteristic across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when it comes down to it, the game is about the offensive line. You can point to a million other things that go on. You can point to special teams. You can point to the quarterback. You can point to the defense giving up the untimely play when they really needed to stop. All of those things, penalties, blah, blah, blah. What it comes down to is the offensive line. And I think that is maybe why I come into this podcast, into this recording, feeling shrug. We knew two things going into the 2023 football season. Well, we knew three things. Number one, if Caleb Williams was playing, USC had a chance to win every game.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, that the defense needed to improve if USC was actually going to contend for college football playoff. Not just to get there, but to win games in the college football playoff. And that the biggest vulnerability on offense was going to be the offensive line because it was a complete rebuild. Bringing back Justin Dedich was big, but when it came down to it, losing Andrew Voorhees, losing Brett Nealon, losing other depth pieces up front, was going to be the biggest question for USC coming into this that wasn't about the defense. So USC hit the transfer portal. We liked the additions that they made. We thought they were good additions. And USC learned the hard way, I think, that the transfer portal is also a little bit of a crapshoot, and you will hit and you will miss. And the rebuild on the offensive line right now looks like a giant miss across multiple positions.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the story of why USC lost this game, because facing one of the better defenses that USC will play this year, the offensive line was untenable. And I've said that we've seen Caleb Williams deal with the offensive line not being on board. We've seen him deal with pressure in his face, but I think this was a step beyond the bad offensive line performances that we've seen, because it wasn't just like one guy getting beaten. It was three guys getting beaten on every play.
Yeah.
And you can't win that way. You can't win that way when your quarterback is put in those positions and then makes the bad decision to not protect the ball. You can't win that way when you don't have any real depth to replace the guys on the offensive line who are making all of the mistakes. The one depth piece that you thought you might be able to rely on gets a season-ending injury in week 2 or week 1, and that's where you're at. You're just not going to win games against good defenses when your offensive line is overrun. And your quarterback is forced into mistakes, and your wide receivers drop the ball and fumble, and they commit penalties that put you in 1st and 20 or 1st and 25 and 2nd and 20 and 2nd and 25 and all of those things. I think the big surprise from tonight is simply that the defense was by far the best unit on the field for USC.
Yeah, if you would have been told before the game, SC is going to allow 251 yards of total offense, would you have taken it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I need to look it up. I want to say that that's the fewest number of yards SC has allowed in a really, really long time. Mind you, part of it is just because Notre Dame had so many short drives. Notre Dame had 1, 2, 3, 4. 4? They only had 4 touchdown drives? Of those 4 touchdown drives, one of them was more than 50 yards. One of them.
Which is why it's
one of them was 2 yards.
242 yards for Colorado in 2021 was the last time that USC held somebody under 250.
Yeah. It's I put on Twitter on the Rant Line account that SC has allowed 41 points, because at one point it was 41 points, and then Notre Dame scored another touchdown at the end. Could have scored another one to make it 55 if they really wanted to. But and like I said, SC has allowed 41 points to the last 3 weeks, and yet the defense has gotten better in each of those 3 games. And this isn't to say that the defense is, playing at the level, at a championship level or any of those things. More so that I think that this is a prime example of the inequality of point values from game to game. Yes, SC gave up 41 points to Arizona, but the 41 points they gave up to Arizona are not the same 41 points they gave up to Colorado. Yes, Notre Dame scored 48 points on USC tonight. It's not the same 48 points that you can look at the last 2 weeks, right? Of those 48 points, there's a special teams touchdown, there's a defensive touchdown, and there are 4. Was it 4? 3 drives of short fields. 3 touchdown drives of short fields, including a 2-yard touchdown drive. It's not the same. It's not the same. The problem tonight was the offense, and this is 2 weeks in a row where the offense has been the issue. 2 weeks in a row. Last week we said that Caleb Williams' game against Arizona was the worst we'd ever seen him. No, it's tonight. It was tonight, and then they could not handle the pass rush from Notre Dame at all. And I think you talk about the offensive line struggling in the rebuild and all of that stuff. I think for me, it's not just the lack of pass protection, it's the lack of run blocking the offensive line has. Because last year, we talked about it. They weren't great in pass pro, but they were an elite run blocking offensive line. And all the metrics bared that out when you looked at things like line yards, when you looked at things like opportunity rate. Opportunity rate, SC was far and ahead the best offensive line in the country last year, right? But that's not the case this year. They don't have the offensive line that is at an elite level in run blocking, and that hurts because when you're not able to run the ball as well as being able to throw the ball, Caleb Williams can take away a lot of the issues of the pass protection, but there's no Caleb Williams that's going to take away the issues of the run blocking. And when you can't run the ball effectively, in addition to not being able to throw the ball, everything sort of comes down and crumbles. And, SC ran the ball a ton in this game. It wasn't for a lack of trying to run the football. They ran the ball 37 times. Obviously there's, 13 of those were Caleb Williams, but this is a game in which they were down the entire game. And runs and passes were an even 50-50 split. Obviously sacks are included in there, so it's not a completely holistic thing there, but you know what I mean? So it wasn't for a lack of trying to run the ball in this one. You can almost say that SC ran the ball too many times because in the second half, when they needed to move the ball quickly,
to speed things up, yeah,
they were still running the ball. And I think for me, the biggest problem in this game is if Caleb Williams is going to have an off night, and if he's going to make horrific decisions like he did, and the offensive line isn't going to be able to block and put him under duress, sort of compounding things to make the bad decisions that he made, you need to find a way to subvert that either with the running game or with some sort of pass game that subverts the blitz. SC couldn't do it with the run game. Okay, well then you need to find something. You need to find the screen game. You need to find some sort of different thing going on offense, and SC just had no answer. They had no answer to make a change, make an adjustment there to give SC a different mode of attack.
because
There was nothing stripping it away to be like, okay, we can't block to save our life, so then we're going to do this. There wasn't an answer there.
Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of overreactions, I will call them, to acting like this is Lincoln Riley's offense being exposed, that this is Lincoln Riley being, this is an indictment on Lincoln Riley, blah, 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 whatever. I don't see it because to me, if you have watched football long enough, you learn one big thing. If your offensive line is losing the battle in the trenches as badly as USC's offensive line was losing the battle in the trenches, I don't care what offense you run. If you are running I formation, if you are running air raid, you can be running A11, every situation. If your offensive line is getting beaten as bad as USC's offensive line was, not just schematically, but like physical beats, there is nothing you can do. I don't know what you can do. I don't know what USC was supposed to do because they were trying to get the ball out quickly and the ball was getting batted down at the line. They were trying to, they tried running the ball. It wasn't working. They tried going outside. It wasn't working. It started working when they started doing the slants inside, but you can only do that so long before a linebacker sits on those. You can't go deep because you don't have enough time for it. You can't go short because dudes are in the backfield immediately. It is really, really that simple. You will not move the ball. You will not score points if your offensive line is getting beat as badly as they were getting beat. And maybe there were areas where USC could have adjusted to deal with that. But at a certain point, you can't adjust to every single offensive lineman from your best to your worst getting worked on every single play as an individual. I don't know what else you are supposed to do if that is what is going on. Now, preparation, absolutely critical. Be critical of. Coaching, absolutely be critical of. But I don't know what else USC was supposed to do. You roll out and you're just getting met with a guy on the edge.
Yeah.
You try doing a screen, you're just getting, this is too disciplined of a defense to take advantage of, in my opinion, on that front, because USC tried doing trick plays. They tried doing reverses. They tried doing this, that, and the other thing. And Notre Dame was disciplined enough to not get beat by them. So you're very, very limited in what you're able to do if you can't win that battle up front. It's just that's it's just that simple. I don't know what else to say. And you can have this be an indictment of Lincoln Riley, and you can, I think, go into silly talk about how USC needs a new coach or wanting him to go to the NFL or complete 180 of like, this is Clay Helton all over again. And you can do all those things if you really want to make yourself that miserable. But when it comes down to it, you lost the battle at the line of scrimmage, and every team that loses the battle of the line of scrimmage, most of the time they lose games.
Yeah,
and I don't know what
the problem was that they didn't just lose the battle; they lost it really bad.
Yeah, they lost it very badly. But I don't know what to do when they couldn't have possibly recruited freshman offensive linemen to come in and fix this offensive line in the time they've lost recruiting battles that they shouldn't have lost. But true freshmen were not going to fix this. So you go out into the transfer portal, and we all agree that the transfer portal additions that they made were strong transfer portal additions. So we all agreed that in the offseason. So then okay, if we thought that they did what they could on that front, and then it comes to the game time and those dudes are just not getting the job done, and the other guys that USC brought back are not getting the job done. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Either way, the crazy thing for SC here is that the crazy thing in terms of like just sheer irony is that you go into a game, not expecting. I've talked about it before. Bill Connolly talked about how literally 2 weeks ago that SC's offense was the most reliable thing in college football because it was. It was it literally was Lincoln Riley's offense has been for the last 7 years the most consistent thing in college football, like the most tried and true thing. And then the last 2 weeks have happened. Caleb, I've seen things. I saw things on Twitter about Caleb Williams' focus is not there. I thoroughly don't buy that as any sort of excuse. I am starting to wonder if there is some sort of thing with his throwing. There was a shot tonight on the camera that was very close onto his hand, and looks like there was like his right throwing pinky was heavily taped up.
His pinky is heavily taped.
We were having some sort of discussion of like, is it just tape? It's just taped up? Is it a splint? Is it what? And I think that could explain some of the throws. Maybe the first interception where he wants to throw to Lake McCree, who's wide open underneath, and then he just sort of airmails a little lob. Maybe that explains it. The throw last week early in the game to Taj Washington out of the backfield, where he just 5 feet away and just completely misses it. Maybe that thing explains it. It doesn't explain the decision making. It doesn't explain everything else. I do wonder if maybe that has altered some of the things like play calls. I do wonder if it altered maybe if it was a thing last week too. I don't know. Of maybe the mesh point stuff that we talked about going into this week, which was a problem against Arizona. Didn't seem to be an issue tonight, where snaps and mesh point plays weren't overly the issue tonight. So I don't know. I don't know. It's either way. You have to have a way to try to find to get out of the hole that you're in. And SC just did not have an answer for any of those things. Defensively, the frustrating thing for USC's performance tonight is just the untimely times in which they did allow scores, right? Like, if SC would have been able to pitch a shutout in this game, they could have weathered everything. But we talked about it in the preview. This is a defense that is just going to give up 28 points. Go into every game expecting that they're going to give up 28 points, just straight up. And if it's a good team, it's going to be 35. If it's a great team, it's going to be 42. Whatever it is, right? That doesn't take into account defensive scores, special teams, touchdowns, all those things. You just end up having to add to that number. And if this is a 20-point, defense, because that's just how they are, you need to have the offense to outscore them. And SC has had the offense to outscore them, the nation's number one scoring offense all year long and all of last year and all those things. So you can't have both of them at the same time. You can't have the offense struggling this way to match with this defense, because it doesn't work. Because it prevents the comeback. There were times in this game where SC tried to string together some sort of a semblance of a comeback, and then that's when the long touchdown pass that Hartman has, the big 46-yarder to Tyree for the touchdown, is a backbreaker, right?
Yeah, but that's why it's very frustrating, because USC's defense actually was getting the stops that they needed in this game until that backbreaker. And that backbreaker is completely expected. I mean, you had your nickel one-on-one with the arguably the best wide receiver that Notre Dame has on the field. Jalen Smith, I thought, had a very good game. But the way that this defense operates, they are going to be susceptible to that kind of play if you give the quarterback enough time. And I think that USC's defense, in a few moments, really needed to get to Sam Hartman more quickly. They needed to disrupt him to not give up those plays. But when it comes down to it, the backbreaker penalty, the backbreaker touchdown that USC gives up is like the least of USC's problems. It's unfortunate. You obviously don't want it to happen. You need to figure out ways to not have it happen, but it's like the defense gets stops after that, the offense goes and scores, and then they just give up a special teams score. So it was just always, it was one of those nights for USC. I think that the bigger issues that I have right now with this team are a general sense of sloppiness. The penalties were really troublesome. The turnovers were all from sloppiness. Those kinds of things put you in a hole that your defense was never going to be capable of digging you out of. And like you said, like you can't you can't spot the other team 21 points. You just can't do it.
Especially when you don't have, you don't have Michigan's defense, right?
Yeah.
Michigan's defense, if SC has Michigan's defense, I think there's a way that they win this game, right? Despite having all those issues on offense. Because maybe they force a couple of field goals out of those short field drives. Maybe they don't give up the long touchdown or whatever it is, and you're able to claw back. But when you have a defense that isn't perfect, you got to put up or shut up on offense, and SC couldn't do it.
And the other thing too is, I mean, I know you want, again, you want your defense to sort of make those stops, but we also watched USC's offense for the rest of the game. Like, why should I believe that the offense was going to generate the 10 points that they needed if that if that special teams touchdown doesn't happen?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I have a lot of faith that that's what would have come. Because the performance on offense was what it was. It was just straight up bad. And you can't go on the road in a rivalry game and play this poorly and expect to win. That's the reality. Do I think that I think the thing that's frustrating is it was a bad game. It was a straight up bad game. Does that mean that we need to have everybody turning around and acting like the sky is falling when USC is 6-1 and lost the one non-conference game that we knew that they could lose, and maybe doesn't have the offensive line that is capable of taking USC to the playoff, but or the defense for that matter, but it's just wild to me that the conversations that are being had right now in the bigger picture about giving up on the program.
Well,
because I don't know. It's silly. It's your binary conversation that I think is always worth having too.
Yes, if you're not winning a national championship, it's a failure. And part of this is because SC breeds this by being a program that expects to compete for national championships, right? Like if SC was Arizona, these conversations wouldn't be the same, right? At the same time, I'm a Chelsea fan. I think it's a bad thing to be like Chelsea and be known as the school who the club who just fires managers left and right. It's ridiculous. So this idea of comments about you can't wait for Lincoln Riley to go to the NFL. Oklahoma fans were right. He's a fraud the whole time. Take a deep breath. It was a bad loss in which arguably Lincoln Riley's worst coast night of his career and all those things. Yeah. Yes. Caleb Williams' worst performance. Yes. This is also not the Clay Helton era. This is take a deep breath. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. You know what I mean? I saw there was a comment in the chat that there's no way that Caleb Williams wins the Heisman now. I think that is categorically wrong. If the offensive line continues to struggle and this is how the offense is for the rest of the season, then yes, obviously he's not going to win the Heisman Trophy again. He also this happening on the same day that Michael Penix has his big Heisman moment, not great, right? For the Heisman race. He also plays Michael Penix at home in 3 weeks. He has to go on the road to play at Bo Nix. I am not as it stands right now. I'm not saying that SC is going to fare well in those games, but those games still exist. There's still matter. A ton of opportunities for SC to still have those moments there. Do I think that SC is going to pull them out and all those things? No, but they're there, right? The season is not over. So,
no, but people are acting like the season is over and that the program is over and that it's the end and it's chaos. And it's we went through I'm very frustrated by this just because, like, what is it okay for this fan base just once to look at a loss and call it a loss and call a spade a spade? It's a bad loss. These are the reasons that the loss happened, without it turning into a panic stations, like broad, stupid commentary about how I hope that Lincoln Riley goes to the NFL, or Oklahoma fans were right, or anything like Lincoln Riley can't possibly win a playoff game, or anything like that. Like, can it just be that this team isn't there? Can it just be that this team isn't there? Because to me, that's what's pretty clear. The offensive line isn't there. The defense isn't there. Those things can be fixed. USC moves forward into the future with a head coach that, by the way, has already been to the playoff, which is more than any other head coach that you could go out and get right now.
So, you're talking about,
I don't know why we need to be talking about moving on from the head coach that USC went out and picked up from a team that had been winning 11 games every year and going to the playoff every other year, and moving on from a time when the program was clearly at this level and not even sniffing the level that we've even been talking about this year, about whether or not USC, what would it take for USC to be a playoff contender and all of that kind of stuff. And then USC does go out and make the good hire, the best hire since Howard Jones, the strongest hire since Howard Jones. And USC fans can't go, how many games has Lincoln Riley? Can't go 20 games without turning around and saying, well, screw this guy, let's go move on to the next. Well, okay, who are you going to hire? Tell me who you're going to hire, who's going to go out and put USC in a position to be any good. Because you know what? If USC didn't go out and get Lincoln Riley, they were going to get Matt Campbell. And before that, if they had fired, if they had made a hire when they should have with Clay Helton, they were going to, at best, do Tom Herman. If I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't. I just can't with it. I just can't. Call the game what it was. Let's have a conversation about why USC lost the game. Let's have a conversation about what USC can do to fix the game, to fix the problems in the game. But just leave it at that. Why does it have to turn into the head coach that everyone agreed was the best hire in college football last year has to get thrown out on his ass, and you have to go hire who? I don't know. Fred in the chat saying John McKay was a better hire than Howard Jones. No, what we're talking about is the hire that USC went out and made that wasn't an assistant coach.
There's a difference between hire and tenure. Hire and tenure are two different things. McKay's tenure, every bit as good as Howard Jones. They both won national titles. McKay went longer. Yeah. McKay was also just an offensive coordinator at USC that got promoted from within.
Yeah.
If SC did that today, people would lose their minds.
Yeah.
He was
because
also,
that's what they did with Clay Helton, by the way.
He also did nothing in his first year and people would lose their minds.
Yeah.
But things are different, right? But to go back to, okay, how do things move going forward for the Trojans, right? Yes, I think the season is still completely there in play for SC for the rest of the year, if they're able to channel the offensive prowess from earlier in the year. But if they're not, if the last 9 quarters is what this offense actually is, then that's a problem, because next week, Utah without Cam Rising
is essentially Notre Dame.
It's Safeway Select Notre Dame. It's the same thing, like Kirkland signature Notre Dame. Like it's a quality off brand of Notre Dame, right? Like Utah without Cam Rising is Notre Dame.
Yeah. But
UCLA,
Utah's run game is not as good as Notre Dame's, and Utah's quarterback.
No, but their offensive, I mean, like their defensive line is every bit as good, if not better, than Notre Dame's is. UCLA might have the best defense in college football, and that's still on the schedule.
Yeah.
We saw it today with Oregon and Washington, how Oregon was able to disrupt Michael Penix for a lot of the second half. Michael Penix was limping around
UCLA
for
also
part of
just
that
gave
game.
up 36 points to Oregon State. I just want to add. So I don't know.
There were also a ton of interceptions in that game from Dante Moore. It was not too dissimilar from this game. So like we can say that there is the chance there for SC to put it all together, but the schedule doesn't exactly do them favors going forward, and that makes it difficult. I'm not sure that look at the schedule. I surely probably wouldn't bet on it, but you know what you guys can do? You can join DraftKings, because right now, if you're in, maybe you're on the train, maybe you're headed back to Chicago after this game, after this big loss, you need something to turn you around. Well, DraftKings is right there, and they're running a new promotion that you won't want to miss. New users can place $5 first bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. You'll also be rewarded with a separate no sweat single game parlay every single day when you opt in. All you have to do is sign up with our code Reign of Troy, and using our code Reign of Troy not only gets you these great bonuses, but it also directly supports the podcast. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure you use the code Reign of Troy to maximize those first bets and parlays. This offer, of course, is only available to new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states such as Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, wherever you are right now. Please remember to always, wherever you are, assuming that you are in a legal gambling state, please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. We got a super chat from Cholison. Thank you. You guys are saying that we're losing 4 games. No. I think it's definitely a possibility. I don't see how it's not.
I think USC was always
if they play like they played tonight, then yeah.
Sure.
Oh,
they're gonna lose a lot of games if they play like they play tonight. But like I said, like the interceptions were uncharacteristic of Caleb Williams. The defense that Notre Dame puts on the field is a very, very good defense that was able to unsettle USC, and USC is going to have to look at this and figure out how to deal with this level of defense if they're going to go out there. But like, why can't they do that? Why can't they do that? To go out and figure out how to better deal with this kind of defense and go out there and not throw 3 interceptions and get in a 21-point hole.
Yeah.
It's I get that you can be very frustrated with this performance, and this performance you cannot afford to repeat even close to this performance. It was just straight up bad. You cannot play this poorly and expect to win any more games this season.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to use this as a come to Jesus moment and a sort things out. And if you don't, you will lose games, and that is the reality. But you also, this isn't a death sentence. You don't have to look at this and say that USC is going to play this poorly every single week and lose every game from here on out. That's not the way things work.
Shout out to Dan, by the way, in the chat.
Yes.
I don't have anything to add to just buying this instead of alcohol. I mean, that helps. That absolutely helps.
Yeah.
We did get a super chat earlier, by the way, that I missed. That was from Torrin in the chat that said, I missed it. It said that we need to use the NUA index, which we might have to discuss on the next pod. I've got to explain it right. I need the right opportunity to explain it.
Yeah.
And then big shout out to USMNT 442 in the chat for just joining the Rot Squad as well. Not a good game, not a good day for the national team. Getting absolutely obliterated by Julian Nagelsmann's Germany today too. So
yeah, it was a rough day.
Rough day in sports
for our household, at least.
What the Dodgers do? Oh yeah, they didn't play today. Yeah,
that's the plus side. Neither of us have to worry about our baseball teams. Adding to the disappointment this week.
There you go.
I just get big brother disappointment because I just found out who won the veto and
no spoilers.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got questions in the chat, so let's get to the questions in the chat.
You've got mail.
All right, Cameron says, "Who or what coach or what unit is to blame on offense?" I blame the whole offense for the loss. I think I think everyone on the offense does deserve sort of part of the blame here. You can say that on one hand, the very simple answer is it's the 3 interceptions to go down in the hole. But what caused the 3 interceptions? Bad decision making by Caleb Williams. There was the offensive line play that put him under duress. There was also, I think there's been more and more talk about the receivers not taking. I mean, I've seen a lot of people upset about how the receivers have played, not creating separation and all that. I have a hard time blaming receivers strictly because I I'm not enough of an X's and O's person to say that the receivers themselves are not separating because of something that the receiver's doing. I'm not that guy to sit here and say that I know enough to tell you.
Yeah. Shout out to Torin in the chat for another super chat. Said asking Dan if they can borrow Dan's liver.
They're just speaking through super chats now to each other. I like
love
this.
it.
Yeah.
No, the receiver thing is interesting. I think it's difficult to blame the receivers for not getting open in a game where if they did get open, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to see them because the offensive line was having the quarterback be on his back immediately. There were a couple moments in this game where I thought that there were what felt to me like coverage sacks, but that's also, having a couple of those every game is something you almost have to expect, especially against a good secondary. I don't think that's the issue. That's not my gripe with the receivers in this game. I do have a gripe with the receivers in this game. Penalties on the receivers, offensive pass interference penalties put USC in 1st and 25 situations. And USC was having a hard enough time moving the ball. But if you aren't in 1st and 25, then when you do move the ball, there was one, I don't remember if it was a pass interference penalty or what it was, but USC was in like a 1st and 25 or a 2nd and 20 or something like that. And they get a 15-yard play from Zachariah Branch. He breaks loose for 15 yards. That should set you up with a first down. And you can then keep being on schedule. But instead, USC is so far off schedule that even that 15-yard play puts them in a situation where they're in 3rd and 5. They get a 3 or 4 yard rush on 3rd down, and then suddenly you're in 4th down.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that screws over an offense. It's bad enough that your offensive line is getting completely worked to the tune of 11 tackles for loss in this game. But when you also then have mistakes from other position groups, like your wide receivers, just flat out, it's not like it's just flat out mistakes from the penalty perspective. You are shooting yourself in the foot too many times to get off the hook in terms of that wide receiver group. And then you have Mario Williams fumbling. Like it was the game was decided by the time that happened, but that's a moment that you can't afford to have in any game.
Yeah.
And it happens. You have to clean that up. So the wide receivers don't get out of here scot-free, although I think they are the least of USC's worries. To me, it really comes down to the offensive line gave up 11 tackles for loss. Have you ever heard of a team that won a game or came close to a game when their offensive line gave up 11 tackles for loss?
No,
And by
I can't
the way,
think of one off the top of my head. No.
And by the way, Notre Dame is not a havoc creating defensive front. The most sacks they had going into this game was 2.
Yeah, I think that's super telling. Looking at SC's lack of production and all of that. We did get a super chat from Blue Diamond Gem. What's Riley's buyout? Don't get mad at me for asking.
Hey, if you're gonna troll, at least give us a super chat. So I'll drink to that.
Okay, hold on. What, $100 million, right? So then the buyout is probably half that at least. Realistically, I don't know what it is. And then turn around and go throw it to who?
Kirby Smart ain't coming, kids. Kirby Smart ain't coming. And Joseph in the chat says, question, why can't USC be Michigan or Penn State? They can, and that's what coaching does. Eller can do it, but Gritch can't. History tells that story. USC will not be anything in the Big Ten till
Michigan lost to TCU in the playoff.
And James Franklin has literally achieved nothing with Penn State.
Yeah, like
I don't know. Again,
the funny thing is the reign of State College.
Yeah.
Like, are they happy with James Franklin? I don't know that that's the case. No. Yeah, I don't know. Let's go to a question that we got from Andy. What are your thoughts on the wide receivers? It seems like they had no separation, but it's hard to tell if Caleb is just reluctant to throw or the rhythm is off with the receivers not getting open. So another point I wanted to make about this is I think it's tough to judge just this game, even though I've seen that criticism about the receivers from like 3 games now. So it's not just the Notre Dame game, but we had talked about it in the preview. Like, this was going to be the best set of corners that SC had faced all year. Mm-hmm. The numbers on Notre Dame's, pass defense was extremely good. The receivers getting bottled up in this game, in a game in which the defensive line absolutely mauled SC and all those things, I don't think is a crime. But SC struggled to get the separation against Arizona a week ago, right? So it's not just isolated to this game. And yeah, I don't know if that's a receivers thing, if that's a schematic thing. I don't know what it is. I know that this is an offense that is predicated on scheming receivers open. They haven't been open nearly as much as they were last year. So
but they're also not getting it's difficult when the quarterback is having to run for his life and isn't able to scan the field and find receivers and give them a chance to go out there and make plays and make catches. And I just think I'd be more open to having the conversation about the receivers if Caleb Williams was getting 5 seconds to throw on every play and he was sitting back there and it was all covered sacks. It wasn't all covered sacks. Yeah. It just wasn't. So yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Tim says, does it seem like the offense is as methodical as it gets, doesn't have a hurry up offense when they need to score quickly? Yeah, I think that this is one of my frustrations with SC today was the lack of urgency. In the Oregon-Washington game, it was my pet peeve with Oregon. Oregon took forever on that last drive.
Yeah.
It's, the lack of urgency on the final drive last week against Arizona. Just until if they didn't have that Marshawn Lloyd long run, I don't know if they would ever gotten into field goal range given how slow they were going.
Yeah, I also think a lot of that was Notre Dame. Notre Dame was trying to force USC into being into having to be more methodical. I do think
methodical, yes, but they were also still taking their sweet time.
I wish that there was less time pre-snap being taken and fewer snaps being taken with 1 second on the play clock,
right?
And all of that. So I certainly wish that process was sped up, but it's also hard to say because a lot of that process is about reading what the defense is doing and try to then counteract it and being able to make a change at the line or evaluate that way. Like, so I don't want USC. You don't want your offense to be rushing because that can lead to problems of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to see more tempo, which is a different sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Lamont says, do you feel that the DCs have caught up to Riley's scheme, or is this just Helton's years of bad recruiting have finally caught up to us and the transfer portal can only do so much?
I think that offensive line play, the most important thing in an offense is number one, quarterback play, and not very far behind is offensive line play. A really great offensive line can make a decent quarterback look great. Mm-hmm. And a really good offensive line can take a great quarterback and make him look like it otherworldly. And when you have not recruited the offensive line well enough, and you get into a position where your senior laden offensive line runs out of eligibility, you don't have anybody to replace them with, then you are put into a situation where you are walking a tightrope with transfers. And that's essentially what happened. Now, the long-term concern right now for USC with the offensive line is this staff hasn't recruited the offensive line well enough for the turn. Like that, I think that's a perfectly a very valid criticism. Is that the 2022 recruiting class? That's hard to say because it was just so early. But the 2023 recruiting class needed more juice on the offensive line, and certainly the 2024 recruiting class looks like they're losing the battles on the offensive line. Those things weren't going to make a difference for the 2023 team, at least not a big one, but they will be the difference for 2024, 2025, 2026, that kind of thing. That's certainly a concern.
Yeah. Thanks for the super chat to Fight On MC, who says you guys are appreciated.
You're
Fight
appreciated too. Thank you.
Well, you're all appreciated. Fred says, Alicia, just because we all agree that the O-line transfers in were solid, it still never substitutes for good high school recruiting. The staff is getting crushed in high school recruiting, except at quarterback.
No, I would agree, Fred. I think that's the biggest concern. But I don't think that is a thing that changes the outcome of this game. That's all I'm saying. Like, this game would not have been fixed by USC having, 5-star offensive line recruits in 2024. Just makes it more clear that USC needs to really, whatever they're doing in offensive line recruiting, they need to ramp it up. That is that is very, very clear to me. There are local offensive line recruits who are in the upper echelon of recruits that USC is not even sniffing a chance with. That is a huge, huge problem. But again, that doesn't help you in 2023 against Notre Dame. The offensive line that you have in 2023 is the offensive line that you have in 2023. So you have to, I guess what I'm saying is this. We went into 2023 hopeful of two things. We hoped that the offensive line would be able to keep pace with last year's offensive line because the transfers were going to just be plug and play and it was going to be okay. Maybe a step back, but only a slight step back. We also needed to look at the defense and say that USC's defense needed to get better. And the biggest problem with this team compared to last year is that the offensive line has taken a massive step back and the defense has not gotten better. So when we went into the season looking at USC, we had expectations based on the assumption that those two things would happen. Offensive line would get better, defense would get better. Now, 7 games into the season, it's very clear the offensive line has taken a step back, and it's very clear that at best the defense has not gotten better. So, to me, I'm just adjusting my expectations of where I see this team, because I went into the season understanding that if those things went wrong, then then things would go wrong for the team. So, it's really simple that those things went wrong, and thus this is the position that USC is in, and it doesn't need to be any deeper than that. I don't know.
Lamont says, do you feel like me that with dealing with USC comments this year is seriously taking the joy out of the season for me? Instead of celebrating Caleb, and everything has just become USC bashing just to bash.
Lamont, if you listened to me earlier, you know my frustration. I just want to be able to talk about a football game where things happened and that we are discussing the football team and why they lost and what things need to be fixed and all that, without it turning into an indictment of bigger picture things that we spent the last 5 years every single week beating a dead horse about whether or not Clay Helton was a good enough head coach for USC, beating that dead horse week after 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 week. And now USC has made the proper hire, been bold, been aggressive, and been ambitious. And we are not even, we are halfway through the second season, and already every single week is an indictment of week after week after week having to discuss the bigger, like, I'm just,
Yeah,
I'm over
it's you know, I mean, it doesn't help that, you know, SC has a night in which they are thoroughly just outclassed, and
yeah.
there's not much to say other than, hey, yeah, they were thoroughly just outclassed and
Yeah.
dismantled up front.
But okay, but
like what is there to say?
But that's
right?
the most frustrating thing about this game. The most frustrating thing about this game is USC was thoroughly outclassed in terms of like sloppiness and that kind of stuff. But I don't look at this Notre Dame team and think they are impressive. If I'm Notre Dame, I look at this performance and think, oh dear. Our offense couldn't move the ball on USC's defense. Oh dear. I look at, like, Notre Dame is not going to look back at this game and think like this was a portent of things to come. I don't think that this is like,
Right.
that's what's very frustrating, because this game was there for the, like, it's, there's no good reason except for the offensive line being what they are, that this game should have been the way that it was. Like, there's no reason USC should have been out of this game. This could have just been another weird, sloppy, weird USC's offensive line gets beat game, but USC has a chance to win it. And USC just shot themselves in the foot so many times that they didn't even give themselves that chance.
Yeah. We got a comment from Cam Life who says, why is Tackett Curtis still starting? He doesn't do anything out there. He got a tackle for loss somewhat early in the game. We've discussed this plenty over. If it was up to you and me, I think the USC starting linebackers would be a 3-man rotation between Gentry, Lee, and probably Cobb.
But even then, I don't think this was probably Curtis's best game so far.
It was a game
8 tackles, 6 solos, 1 tackle for loss.
I don't know that there was any, like, this is the thing about the I think it's difficult to talk about the defense in this game, is that Notre Dame's offense, we talked about all week. Notre Dame's offense they looked like world beaters the first 4 weeks. They were up there with SC, Oregon, Washington, among LSU, among the statistically one of the best offenses in the country in the first 4 weeks. Then they played all the ranked teams, and all those offensive numbers completely just did a 180, right? I don't think tonight validated that the first 4 weeks were more like what the Notre Dame offense is. I think tonight validated that they are the offense that we saw against Ohio State and Duke and Louisville. And SC, not being a great defense themselves, couldn't take advantage enough of that. But at the same time, it's difficult to sit here and say that, like, yeah, Tackett Curtis's 8 tackle performance was like a sign of more things to come, right? Like, you know, next week, I think next week SC's defense is going to look good against a Utah team that has 2 backup quarterbacks, and neither one is really running away with the starting job, right? Mm-hmm. And I think SC's defense can look pretty good in that game. Does that give you more hope with what they're going to look like on the 4th of November against Michael Penix? No?
Well, I think what I want to see from the defense, what I was encouraged by in this game so frustratingly, because ultimately it did not matter, is I want USC's defense to look decent against weaker offenses.
Yeah.
And they haven't necessarily done that to the degree, like, I needed them to do that against ASU, because ASU does not have a good offense, and USC made that offense look better than it was.
Yeah.
Now,
Reading is fundamental in the chats. That's the username. Says when the defense gives up 48 points, you have a problem.
they did not give up 48
I
points.
think that Mr. Reading is fundamental. It might be a time to take a look at the box score. The defense did not give up 48 points here.
They gave up two touchdowns were on drives of less than 10 yards.
It was a special teams touchdown. There was a defensive score, and there were 3 short fields, including a 2-yard drive against the defense.
Yeah.
I am willing to say in the worst, like take out 14 and it was 34 points that the defense allowed. I mean, sure. I mean, technically, 27 if you take away the 2-yard drive, like
I'm giving the defense 3 points on the 8-play 46-yard field goal drive in the first quarter. I am giving them I will give them the touchdown on the 5-play 50-yard drive after the interception, just because that wasn't the first 2 interceptions were 2 yards and 12 yards out. So that's 10 points, and then I will give them the Jalen Smith big play over the top. So that's 17.
I think it's fair to say 27. 27. But what did we say all week? This is a 28-point defense. Yeah. This is what they are.
If they just keep to that, then USC can win games. The problem is the offense didn't live up to its side of the bargain. It's actually like it's wild how clear of a line that USC has drawn in that degree. And part of the problem is that Notre Dame's offense is very uninspiring. And I think they proved that in this game. But Utah's offense has been very uninspiring. So all I need from USC's defense in that Utah game is to make an uninspiring Utah offense look uninspiring. You don't even need to I'm not even going to expect them to dominate, because I am realistic and I'm not. I don't think you are going to put lipstick on this pig and turn it into something that it's not. But if you make the offenses that are uninspiring look uninspiring, then you will be okay. You need your high-powered offense, what should be a high-powered offense, to then live up to their end of the bargain. That's the whole deal. USC, no one went into this season thinking that USC's defense was going to win them football games.
Yeah.
The only thing you need from USC's defense, realistically, right now, in the context of of the defensive coordinator and all of the decisions that were made, is that they do not lose you football games. And they certainly did not lose this football game.
Jeff in the chat says Grinch has been terrible for 5 years now. Stop defending him. There's no defense.
He should not have been. He should not have been hired. He should not have been.
There's no defending him here.
Given this 2023 season, but
just because I'm not sitting here right now and saying that he needs to be tarmacked immediately for giving up 48 points because there was a special teams touchdown in there, doesn't mean that I'm defending him. I think everyone on USC's coaching staff and roster needs to be criticized for a performance like this. 1,000% over. Like it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. At the same time, when we're talking about just this game, of all the crimes that happened here tonight for the Trojans, defense wasn't a top 5 of them. It just wasn't.
No.
It just wasn't when you look at how the performance went down for SC there. Let's go to a question from Joey, who says, "Is the bad O-line play the last few weeks due to the transfers not gelling together as a unit, or is it Josh Henson's coaching?"
Well, for these kinds of questions, it's always both. I think that you can very clearly look at it and say that the transfers have not worked out the way that they needed to work out. Where does the responsibility for that ultimately lie? It lies on the coach. This is the same thing why when we talk about USC's defense, we can talk about the individual players and the mistakes that they're making or the missed tackles or the broken coverage or whatever it is that you talk about. But anytime you're talking about that, you're still going back to, okay, who is responsible for getting these guys prepared to play the game? Who is responsible for coaching them up, putting them into position to succeed?
Yeah.
It's the coach. It's Alex Grinch on the defense. So I cannot sit here and say that USC's offensive line got absolutely worked and that the transfers that USC brought in to plug in, to fix, to fill the holes that USC had going into the season that were always going to be difficult to fix, but still needed to be fixed. It still has to fall on the offensive line coach for not getting them. For one, for bringing in transfers that the evaluation was wrong on, if that's the case. Or two, for not putting them in position to succeed, for not coaching them up and getting them ready to win these battles. So yes, it is a Josh Henson problem. It is a Alex Grinch problem, and it does rise to a Lincoln Riley problem for all of the bigger problems that come in this game.
Yeah. I want to run through some quotes tonight from the press conference. We're going through the Twitter accounts from Shotgun Sprouting over at uscfootball.com. USC head coach Lincoln Riley's primary word of his opening statement was disappointed. Lincoln Riley felt that the Trojans were right there until the kickoff return touchdown broke their back. Lincoln Riley says, we've got to put it together, and we've got to put it together fast. Lincoln Riley says, can't wait to get back to the Coliseum and go to battle with this team. Lincoln Riley says, honestly, you lose a turnover battle 5-0. It doesn't matter what else you do. Lincoln Riley, as good as our good plays are good enough, but our bad plays are killing us right now. I think that sums up the defense. That sums up the defense as a season, but it sums up
the offense in this game too.
1,000%. It sums up the offense in this game.
And you know what? I will always go back to fans want to hear coaches say things that coaches are never going to say in post-game press conferences.
Sure.
But what he said there all rings true. And it all that's a correct assessment of the game.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's just about it. I think we got most of the questions that were in the chats. It's been a long day of football. The other news in the Pac-12, Oregon and Washington played a magnificent game. One of the best games of football that you'll ever see. Beautiful game. The Ducks losing on a last-second field goal that they missed wide right. Michael Penix having a big fourth quarter. Great game, I think, for the conference. Great game for the future of the Big Ten. Bad game for USC because the Trojans have both of them on the schedule coming up. And when you look at things like rankings, can you see Oregon falling in the rankings? I can't. I think
they'll fall because teams that lose always fall.
Who below them is moving up? Alabama's moving up? I don't think so. SC's not moving up.
SC's not moving up because USC also lost. If USC hadn't lost, then
I think Oregon's going to stay right where they are.
Let me see who else is undefeated.
I think Oregon's going to stay right where they are.
I think Oregon falls behind Texas. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think they fall much further than that. They shouldn't. They should be one of the top one-loss teams in
absolutely. I would put Oregon ahead of Texas, honestly. Yeah, probably. And Washington should probably move up a couple spots.
Washington will only move up one spot. They will move up ahead of Penn State, and they will be number 6, and that is really unfortunate.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room for them to move up until those teams start losing. Yeah. Other news in the Pac-12, Cam Rising did not play again for Utah. it looks at this point like either he's going to make his debut against SC next week, and this was all a ruse until that happened, which is wild conspiracy brain stuff that I don't think is going to happen. Or like realistically, he's probably needs the red shirt, right? Probably.
If he has any interest in like if he's done with college, then there's no point in redshirting, and that might be where I don't know where he's at mentally. Like he might be or might not be. If he's not done with the college game, then he should come back. He should try to come back next year, and redshirting, taking the medical redshirt would do it. It's just really it's just so hard to say because they've been flirting with the idea of him being ready every single week this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be it. But at the same time, Utah on the road is just so predictably not they don't perform well away from Rice Eccles. So do you risk bringing him back and have him playing an angry USC team? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're getting a question about where USC should fall.
I don't know. Okay. Would I put? Let's just go down the list.
I think USC.
Do you rank SC above Alabama? No. North Carolina? No. Ole Miss? No. Louisville? No. Oregon State? No. Utah? Coin flip? Is SC better than Duke?
USC drops at least 5 spots. It could be more just because the perception of USC is so negative and that game was so bad.
Washington State will fall out of the polls.
UCLA will fall out.
Yeah. Kansas is going to drop out.
That's one.
Arizona will hop in.
One of the reasons that USC won't fall like crazy far down is because a lot of those teams down back lost. So there's only so many spots to drop. Notre Dame do they rank 6-2 Notre Dame ahead of 6-1 USC? That's always funny to me because a lot of voters don't like putting 2 lost teams ahead of 1 lost teams, but also a lot of voters don't like putting a team that just beat another team behind them. So
right,
that's going to be really interesting.
It's
going to be somewhere in the late teens.
I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame was like 18 and SC was like 19, something like that. I think could make sense. I don't know. Either way, SC's a weird team to rank right now because what team are you getting? Are you getting the team that played against Notre Dame? Because that team is not a ranked team. If you're getting the team that we saw in the first half of the Colorado game, that's a top 5 team in the country. What team are you getting? I don't know. Yeah, play 60 minutes. So hard to say that one, the great first halves against Colorado and Stanford are everything because those aren't 60 minutes for a whole game. Those are 2 halves. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see on Monday what happens with the rankings. Also Monday we'll get the time for the Cal game, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. And then that'll be that. So we'll be back Monday to talk more about USC and Notre Dame. Just what more SC fans want. More talk about a game in which SC gets absolutely blown the hell out. But here we go. We'll be back Monday. As always, you can give us your calls, 818-643-7227. Email address, rantoftriumphanside.com. Hit us up there. You can get all of our bonus content over on YouTube here for $4.99 a month. You get access to the Discord and all of that as well. Until then, we'll be back on Monday. Final word, Alicia, you got one?
No, I don't.
All right. Until then, we will see you.
See ya.
See ya.